Thank you, Kieran, in your own inimitable way for the introduction. Well, everybody, thanks for sticking with us. The first session after the lunch period, so never easy. But we're here to talk about the mechanics of publisher monetization. I know we've already had a bit of an intro as to what you guys do, etc. But particularly for yourself, Damon, I'm interested. Project Ozone. If you could just tell us a little bit more about what you do. Keep it at the elevator pitch level.
Okay.
And we can follow along and then get into other topics to discuss. Jordan.
So I'm Damon Reeve, CEO of the Ozone Project, which is a collaboration between now 4 newspaper groups in the UK, News UK, Reach, The Guardian and The Telegraph.
Okay. And Reach, that's the new announcement that went out this morning?
This morning, yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. Jordan, just very briefly, besides inventing bid caching, what do you do at Index Exchange?
Yeah, so I did a video a couple years ago with Kieran, and I've typically been on the innovation curve a little bit ahead of my time normally, pushing things for marketers, pushing things for publishers, and just trying to basically bring us into the next wave of innovation. My title's Global Intelligence, and I think the information that is within this room and within our industry is really what drives that innovation curve.
Okay. Karen, what about yourself and your role at the Telegraph?
So I am the Director of Digital Sales and Innovation. The innovation part is something I've been spending a lot more time on recently, which is really looking how can we better understand our audience, what drives engagement around the site with them, and then how we can bring that to commercial partners with using first-party declared data. So it's really about that premium publisher environment. How do we better bring that to market?
Okay. Okay, great. And Jason, tell us a little bit about what you do on Unruly.
I definitely didn't invent bid caching.
Okay.
So I work for Unruly. Unruly is a video ad tech business. We work closely with many, many publishers, and we support working very closely with big brand publishers. I guess because we're owned by a publisher, News Corp. So I think we're very sensitive to the needs of publishers and how, as a tech business, we need to work more closely with them.
Okay. Okay. So who wants to kick things off? Jordan? Would you mind
looking at me, so.
Clarifying? I'm guessing everybody in the room here kind of knows about bid caching and what's involved. I think it's just under 3 weeks ago now. It kind of emerged in the trade press. And, you guys have since made some announcements around it. Do you want to just clarify with us, Jordan, as the inventor of bid caching, just what it is, why you guys have introduced it, and where you guys are now with the practice? Because obviously you had an announcement midway through last month.
Sure.
About it.
Sure. So there's 2 pieces to that.
Yeah.
One is the marketer side. One of the things that we're working to optimize around is traditionally with programmatic, a marketer would sit in an ad server, and once the ad server communicated with the SSP or exchange, it was the CPM that determined the outcome of the auction. Once we moved into the header, all of a sudden, it wasn't just about the CPM anymore. It had a lot to do with whether or not that bid would even make the publisher's ad server or not. And that was a function of the amount of time that we had. So what we did from a marketer perspective is figure out, well, how do we make sure that every single bid and how do we make sure that a marketer's scarce audience always reaches a publisher's ad server, or at least as much as we possibly can. On a publisher's side, that timeout clock that we have keeps shrinking. And that's really driven by user experience and improving the experience as much as they can. The thing is, the less time that we have available as an exchange, it's harder and harder for us to bring those bids in. So using caching, which is it's just a concept that you can use to make something happen faster, we're able to put those pieces together and really just bring in this new innovation. In terms of where we are right now, I love this room, by the way. Normally, I'm sitting in one of those chairs, waiting for this panel. Just for the record. I don't miss an ATS. In terms of where we are right now, obviously, this is something that we built. We made some assumptions. It wasn't something that was ever fully commercialized. So we've deactivated it entirely. We're working on education. I'm leading a lot of that as, I'll just say the inventor, but really there's a team of people that have worked on this. It's not, I'm not the only person that's done it. And then it's something that's been around in the industry, particularly with publishers looking at ways that they can optimize user experience. And my hope is that through that education and providing some additional controls to DSPs, that we can bring the feature back for everybody.
Okay. Well, look, you may as well just figure out this is what people were chuckling at right behind you here.
Okay.
It's on the infamous ATS Twitter wall.
Right.
So a lot of complaints were about transparency. I'm assuming you got some complaints. This is the kind of reason why the practice was suspended, et cetera, et cetera. What were the nature of these complaints, and how would you indeed publicly retort to them?
So we fundamentally we agree that this shouldn't have been something that we built and deployed without commercialization. I think that those points are valid, and so that's we've recognized that. But really, the problem that we're trying to solve is a real one. It's a problem that's not going to go away, and it's something that's getting worse over time. If you look at a typical publisher environment today, on average, 15% of bids don't make the publisher's ad server. But what we're seeing is that as user experience is becoming more and more of a need for premium media, which is what marketers want to buy, that number is quickly turning into a 60% timeout rate when we reset that clock to what we believe will be 200 milliseconds. So that narrowing is continuing, and our ability to effectively, as an exchange, bid into a publisher's ad server is decreasing. So we think caching is the answer to that, and it's just a matter of getting the communications down and the education piece down, and then providing some additional controls.
Okay. Not that I was meaning to be bashing you, but I just felt like it would have been an elephant in the room if we hadn't discussed it.
Sure.
You folks are from the sell side of the business. Can you offer your take on things?
So my take would be there's a reason why we created the Ozone Project, or there's many reasons, but one particular reason was publishers often have commercial terms dictated on them by people further up the chain that they have no control or say over. Mm-hmm. So I think that the transparency point is one aspect, but there's also a degree of consultation that was missing. This is publisher inventory. Publishers are the stakeholders of the end user, and if something goes wrong, it's the publisher who generally will kind of front the negativity. One of the reasons for the Ozone Project being conceived was to have a more active role in decisioning that's made further upstream. And I think that big caching is probably a good example where we'd expect to be consulted if anything like this was going to happen.
Okay. Karen, I don't know, do you have anything to add to that? Or?
Yeah, sure. I can back up the point about user experience. So, for example, our page load times are 4 times faster than they were this time last year. So I can understand that puts pressure on the tech, but I totally agree with Damon that the issue is transparency from our point of view, but also for our clients. It might be in a year's time we all understand that this possibly is the best solution, but everyone needs to be consulted up front, and we need to know what's happening with our inventory, and we need to know for clients' perspective that they know what they're buying.
Okay. Jason, do you have anything to add to that?
All I would say is I think it's really important that we continue to use technology to innovate. And I think, bid caching is an innovation, but everyone needs to know where they stand and what they are, what they're buying, and what they're using.
Mm-hmm. Have you guys been getting calls from the buy side asking about this, asking your opinion? So Karen, you might be thinking, no?
Honestly, not significantly, no.
Okay.
It's something that will come up in high-level meetings, but the phones haven't been ringing or think about it.
Sure. Okay. Well, I suppose if we go into the broad umbrella of transparency, one of the other big things that's developments over the last 12 months or so has been the kind of slight shift towards first-priced auctions, away from what has been the default. It's been like second-price auctions. Probably one of the big catalysts for this kind of trend has probably been, to my mind anyway, looking at things for a press lens, there was a legal action between Rubicon Project and The Guardian, countersued, etc. And then suddenly we have everybody talking about first price auctions. I suppose if Tim Cadigan's around, like they were doing it prior to that, etc. Do you think that there's much adoption of first priced auctions now, as opposed to second price compared to last year?
I don't have hard numbers to be able to give you an opinion. I can tell you my view on first price versus second price.
Yeah.
And no one, I don't think, could speak on behalf of Guardian or Rubicon on that particular topic.
I appreciate that, yeah.
But again, it comes down to disclosure and transparency. I mean, this is the same issue, right? Someone thinks that they're buying something under certain terms and they're not. While ever there are multi-tiered auctions, which is the world that we're in today, it's very difficult for a second price model to be successful. Buyers are going to miss out. The right price is not going to be set for inventory. So in a primary auction where there's only one auction, then second price auction makes sense. Anything beyond that, first price auction makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just say, with second price auctions, I mean, even for the longest time, the reality was that they were largely governed by a publisher's floor in their market, and what that floor represented was where could you realistically win with your bid, and publishers couldn't be reliant on DSPs injecting enough liquidity into the bid responses to guarantee the density that was needed to achieve a win rate that was high enough in the ad server. So one of the first things that happened with second price auctions is they very quickly became a publisher asking price as opposed to a second price auction. One of the things that I think we did really well with from a commercial standpoint was moving the exchange entirely to first price auctions. And that was something that was done, communicating with publishers and communicating with DSPs and rolling it out very systematically to make sure that there were no issues with its effects. I think ultimately what we wanted to do as an exchange was just remove ourselves entirely from having any involvement in that pricing aspect and just push the best price we possibly could to the publisher's ad server and then allow it to have the highest possible win rate in the ad server.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting. I mean, do you find that the publishers or advertisers or the buy side, are they going more for the first price auction, or what's your observations, Karen?
We run a combination of both first and second price auctions. I think the key for us has probably kind of already been said, but when bid density increases, which as we're focusing less on, or not at all on scale for scale's sake, but more on our premium loyal audience, then there are times like immediately post GDPR when our bid density increases and we need then the pricing to be very nimble and to make sure that we're getting the best price out of the market that we can. Beyond that, the transparency is key, that we know that we're getting the best value out of the market, or a fair value out of the market, and clients know where their bid is going and that it's going to the publisher. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I suppose that kind of brings me on to one of the topics that we're looking to discuss, was the move from a more open marketplace, open exchanges, to closed marketplaces as models such as PMPs become a little more popular. Where are we with that? I mean, I'm kind of interested with yourself, Jason, and Karen. Are you guys seeing more of that in the market? Is it good for business for you guys, or?
It is. I mean, our view is that it should be easy for clients to buy through whichever technology, whichever buying method they want to, and it should be simple and transparent for them. However, the issue with PMPs can be a scalability one. So as we see more targeted segments, then sometimes it's difficult to achieve the scale. For us, we're seeing actually in direct digital buys, audience targeting products are vastly on the increase this year, probably for that reason. And also automated guaranteed is on the increase. So PMPs, we're working hard to set up post-targeting with agencies, but it's probably not seeing the scale that we'd like at this point.
Yeah, so is it despite all the sort of the scares around brand safety, et cetera, still not hitting the scale that agencies are asking for?
I think with stringent brand safety and with stringent data protection for our audiences and stringent targeting, then it's difficult to achieve that scale as well as those things.
Okay. Jason, I'd be interested to get your take on these things.
Yeah, I mean, we post GDPR, we actually saw a slight increase in demand for managed solutions. So it felt like there was a bit of momentum that slowed down in the drive towards moving into a pragmatic place. From a PMP perspective, there are obviously no commitments to volumes going in or buys on the other side. So I think it's, as Karen said, once you start to overlay lots of filters and sort of the safety aspects to it, you end up in a situation where they just don't scale. So I think there is, a kind of a moment now where the concept of guarantees, I think it's a good time. We also think that it will help clients make that leap. I think, when you start to guarantee budgets and outcomes, whatever your definition of a pragmatic guaranteed is, then I think clients will find making that leap into the pragmatic space much more comfortable because I think, there's a bit more surety in it.
Okay, sure. I mean, I often hear when you talk to buyers, they talk about, so you go to a brand and they'll just say reach, scale, et cetera, et cetera. They're just obsessed with those metrics. I mean, how do you overcome that lack of scale that the buyers are asking for? I mean, do you know how it can be overcome? Jordan, if you want to chip in here, and then Damon, on to yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to jump ahead because I know you have like an agenda or whatever, but I think the part of the issue is targeting those consumers. So the ability to have a rich enough of a user graph so that a marketer's data can be overlaid on top of programmatic in a way where they're finding all of that audience. Whereas today, there's just so much fragmentation that exists. It's hard to reach that scale all the time. So that's a lot of our efforts have been centered around just creating a much more rich marketer graph in the exchange.
Okay.
I think that there's I mean, it's pretty much been the theme of today, which is transparency, which Tim Cadogan talked about earlier, about trust in a market is really important. Mm-hmm. And whether it be a programmatic product or an open market product, trust is one of the most important requirements for a market to be successful and to flourish. Yeah. And I think everyone probably agree that the shift towards programmatic, well, basically PMPs, even though they don't have the scale, has that perceived trust and integrity. I know what I'm getting and I know what price I'm getting. But it's not ideal. Like it's people narrow down their targeting scope so narrowly that they can't get any scale and you kind of go around in circles. But I do think that while ever there aren't solutions, and again, Ozone is kind of one of these ones that we're wanting to take to market that does address, hopefully, the issue around trust in a market. If you know the provenance of the environment that your ads are appearing in and where the ad requests are coming from, you're going to trust that you're getting what you paid for.
Okay. Well, getting what you paid for, that's one of the things that was interesting. So scale, trust, transparency, et cetera, et cetera. What about price? When you're asking for these, elevated prices, historically ad tech has been there to beat the hell out of the
Sure, but then people bake risk into the price that they're prepared to pay. Mm-hmm. So I don't think there's any doubt that people pay fair value for something that if they believe it's worth it. Yeah. And so if you don't have trust in a market, then it's a race to the bottom. The good inventory comes out of the market, the fraud comes into the market, and it just keeps going down. What's important is that there's clarity and transparency, and that drives trust, and then people will pay fair value. So I don't think that programmatic should ever be perceived, or I don't think any kind of programmatic product should be perceived as just being cheaper. If that's the perception, then that's because
historically been the case,
it's
though,
the
right?
result of a lack of trust.
Okay. Interesting. Sorry, John.
Yeah, programmatic to me, it's a fulfillment channel it's an automated fulfillment channel as opposed to it doesn't. You could put a tag in an ad server and you could fulfill a budget. You could also allow a PMP to fill that same budget. With a PMP, you have the same level of interaction, hands-on, and value add from the publisher, but you're not necessarily trafficking something in an ad server. It's just coming in through a programmatic channel. So I think we can take advantage of a lot of the frictionless capability of programmatic, assuming that you have that same level of interaction going on with the publisher and the buyer talking to each other.
Interesting. Okay.
I think there's another point too, just on that, which is for the last however long there has been this real sort of drive towards scale and reach, and I think that the output of that is yes, you can buy that, but the environment is questionable, and so you can't all there's no perfect world, and I think that what we're starting to see, there's more and more conversations about a drive towards quality and integrity over scale.
Sure. Karen, you mentioned before about sort of focusing on quality for the reader, quality experience, and so what does that involve? Like, is it less ads, ad opportunities, longer?
It may well mean.
Can you quantify it? So, how would the ad experience be, say, 12 months ago now compared to say 12 months ago? Is it less ad opportunities, more videos? What's
We've taken the ad ratio down, so there are fewer ads per page. But first of all, because it reduces the loading time of page, which is a better user experience, and a better user experience results in a better commercial outcome. So we're far better to let the user experience and the journalism sit at the heart of everything we do, and trust that that means there'll be longer time spent with Telegraph as a brand, there'll be more page views, more returning visits, more loyalty to it. So page views have come down. Our ad tech team focus on user experience for that reason, as the kind of the centre of their premise. So they work with our product teams on building out products that together across our journalism products and advertising speed up our page load times and make sure that there's nothing that's intrusive. We don't have annoying ads. We focus on relevancy. Yeah.
That's cool. So what has the reaction of the buyers been? Are they willing to pay more? Are you getting more?
Yeah, we spent quite a lot of time over the last couple of months speaking to our some of our core clients and also agencies, and what they tell us is, rather than talking about scale in language now, they're talking about meaningful reach, which is an important distinction. I think that we have to have a certain amount of scale, but meaningful data beneath it is more important to them. Context is more important to them. And as more buying comes in-house for clients, they're looking for ways that they can match their CRM data directly with ours. So I think what's happening in the market is we see that it's fine that there's a scale end of the market and then there's a real premium end of the market with that depth of data and knowledge and insight about our audience. And the market is reflecting to us that they understand the difference in those two values and they'll treat them accordingly.
Okay, interesting. Jason, what's your take on these things?
I agree with Karen. I think there's there is much more focus on the value of the engagement. Mm-hmm. Our business is focused on emotional response to commercial execution. So we're very much in tune with the importance of how the user will be receptive to any advertising that they see in front of them, and whether they're emotionally engaged with it. And that can only happen through better data, better context. So, post GDPR, again, I think the importance of context has become super important. I think there's been a slight shift away from hyper-targeting, and then actually the environment becomes much more important. And I think all of those things together, along with, I think the very powerful data that exists, particularly in the hands of publishers, I think there's a really strong movement towards how publishers can really, I think, get the right experience for the user and make those users feel very engaged with their brands.
Would you say, guys, like over the past 12 months, GDPR has obviously come into play? That was only 3 months ago. But do you think that the resulting return to context as opposed to audience, has that been a bit of a wind in the sails for, say, your members, yourselves, your audience?
Yeah, I mean, so I'd say the combination of the responsibility publishers have to safeguard user preferences around how their data is used is one component. Combine that with the challenges that Facebook have had around the Cambridge Analytica scandal and the questionable kind of environments that ads are appearing in on YouTube, etc. I think the provenance of content has become much more important than it probably has been in previous years, and that's a trend that I think will continue.
Okay, Jordan, what have you been seeing? Like, I don't know. I mean, obviously you're a North American company, but you got quite a few clients here. Right. GDPR, has that been a wind in the sails? I mean, obviously, I think across the industry, everybody saw a very quick drop a lot of people are saying it's since recovered. What's your experience of it?
So, I mean, almost every day we go live with a new CMP in the wrapper project, so nothing's slowed down there. I think right when we hit GDPR, there was a reset that happened, which we've quickly recovered from. There's also a lot of interpretations of those laws, what they mean and how seriously somebody wants to take them. We're trying to align as closely as we can around IAB leading those standards and create support that's basically agnostic to any CMP and just pass those signals down to all the DSPs so that they can interpret them. And then in terms of the exchange itself, there's a number of controls that we had to put in place around IP addresses and user IDs and things like that to make sure that we could be in compliance with all of the standards.
Okay. Well, look, we're kind of running quite low on time here, but as to use Kieran's favorite phrase, the 20%ers, of which I'm guessing you guys are, how do you guys intend to use this new mechanics? So we've got GDPRs coming in, we've got similar legislation coming in North America, which is probably going to be very like GDPR-esque, should we say. How do you guys intend to use these new dynamics between technology, bid caching, or a new sort of brand safety focused market amongst marketers? What do you think is going to help you guys get a bigger slice of that 20%, or even go beyond the 20%? Because you guys are relatively new to market.
Yeah, so
on.
not officially in market yet,
Oh, really? Okay.
but imminently. I think that, I mean, one of the driving principles around Ozone was to give publishers greater control in how business is done, and also give advertisers much greater choice in how they can buy audiences at scale.
Whose tech are you using, by the way?
Well, that depends on which part of the product. So there is a data strategy and a data component.
Well, if you consider that Pangea was very Rubicon project to begin with, and then became AppNexus.
Yeah.
Usually these things were like pushed by one vendor. Yeah. Is it proprietary or is it?
Well, it's proprietary in the sense that the Ozone product roadmap is our own. We have a fork of Prebid server that we're building on top of. So we are not building new tech. Okay. Yeah, we're not building new tech. We're layering on top of what is a good and fairly well adopted technology. But there are components to it that are outside of that. So the data warehousing and modeling, et cetera, are all kind of proprietary. Back to your question, I guess there is a layer of control that publishers have been looking for and are looking for. And I think that combined with the data, in the trusted environments that the publishers provide, is where we see value being driven for both publishers but also the buyers moving forward.
So that's where you guys are going to succeed, whereas maybe previous iterations may have not have been so successful.
Well, I can't speak to the previous iterations because I wasn't involved in them. But certainly I think that there is a mindset. Timing, I think, has a lot to do with it. So I think now is the right time for publishers to be collaborating. And with Jason and Verified Marketplace, there's another collaboration around video. Mm-hmm. Now is a good time for publishers to be working together and to I guess, standardizing in some ways the way in which business is done. That opens the door to a much easier kind of demand side.
Okay. Jordan, I'm guessing it's going to be communication, collaboration,
keep driving the innovation curve. Yeah. I mean, like our big bet, and I think, a lot of this room knows, it has been around identity, and just aligning with things like Digitrust and the LiveRamp consortium and all these different things to allow for when we signal a request to a DSP, we can enrich it with as many different IDs as we can, because that's really where the value comes from, the exchange unlocking the ability for the marketer to identify their audience. So in terms of things like privacy, I mean, user privacy is incredibly important to everybody to keep that data rich environment alive. So we just err on the side of the most conservative interpretation of those laws and just play the long game.
Okay. Okay. Karen, how are you guys going to get more of the 20% that's still on the table?
I think there's two answers to that. The first one is collaboration. So the verified marketplace and the Ozone project are absolutely core for us. As premium publishers, we have to make it easier for our customers to engage with us. We need to take down the obstacles that make it harder for them to understand exactly what they've delivered, kind of what the true reach and frequency is across devices. And the Ozone project is going to answer that, exactly what the market are asking for. And then secondly, it's about really understanding our audience in depth, the level of data that we have, the insights that we can bring to advertisers, and those insights not just to make audience decisions, but also to spark ideas for content partnerships, for example. So I think that depth is what we've got to focus on, and then the collaborations will help us to hopefully nudge back. A percentage or two would be nice.
Okay.
Of the duopoly.
Okay, Jason, how do you guys see yourself, getting a bigger slice of that 20%?
I think the future is all about the collaborations. I think we've seen two in the last year that probably a year ago people would have said that will never happen. You will never get publishers to sit around the table together and actually do something collaboratively together.
Yeah. Well, I mean, people have tried in the past.
Yeah,
I mean, where did it go wrong in the past?
Timing, egos. I think now there is so much support from clients and the buy side for an alternative, a scaled alternative, something that's meaningful. So I think it is about timing, and I think we've demonstrated with Ozone and Verified Marketplace that it can be done. I think we should be very, very optimistic, because I think there'll be more of this, and I think this is where the 20%ers can actually start to do some damage, and we should be looking forward to that.
Okay, all right. Well, with that, I mean, if everybody could just give our sort of panelists a round of applause. I'm sure you'll all be here to talk to you afterwards if anybody wants to improve on it. And okay, thank you very much, Rachel.
Thanks.